So let's read this story, a cover written by the famous Indian story writer Premchand, and analyze its parts and understand. So you have introductory note there. Let's read it. As you can see, the story was published in 1933 and it was written by Indian writer Premchand. The story focuses on intra-cultural variation, that is, caste system, and its effects on people's lives. So, the major theme of this story is caste system in Indian culture and its effect on people's lives. Let's read the story paraphrase and analyze. The boy's name was Kesab, the girl's Prema. They went to the same college and they were in the same class. Kesab believed in new ways and was opposed to the old caste customs. Prema adhered to the old order and fully accepted the traditions. Let me tell you something about elements of a story. Characters are an important element in a story. And as you can see in the opening paragraph, right in the very first sentence, the story introduces us to the two of the major characters from the story, Keshav, the boy, and Prema, the girl. In your copy, write the heading Elements of a Story, then write the subheading Characters, and then write A and B and note Keshav and Prema. So we know that this story is about a boy and a girl, and we also should know that a boy is opposed to a girl and a girl is opposed to a boy. Then we read that both of them went to the same college and they studied in the same class. Now, if you focus on second sentence, it says that Kesab the boy believed in new ways and he was opposed to the old caste customs. This is important point to note down. In your copy, note a second element. In a story, we have something called conflict. Note down, CONFLICT. Conflict means when two elements cannot go together, when two people cannot go together, when two parties cannot go together. For example, these days in Nepal, you can see political conflict. One of the popular politicians, young politicians from a newly formed party, has been arrested on charge of financial embezzlement. And as you can see in Pokhara, there are demonstrations every day. That's one example of conflict, political conflict. Now, as I told you, that conflict is another very important element in a story. There is no story without conflict. You cannot create a story or narrative without any conflict. It is conflict which develops the plot in a story. Now let's talk about what is the conflict here that we see. So as you read, Kesab believes in new ways and he was opposed to old caste system. So you can see the conflict between new ideas versus old ideas. Note down, there is a conflict between new ideas and old ideas. So this is ideological conflict. This is ideological conflict. Keshav believes in new ways. What does it mean? Modern ways. For example, Keshav does not believe in caste system. He is opposed. Now read the next sentence. Prema adhered to the old order and fully accepted the traditions. Now you see the boy follows new ways, but the girl follows the old order and accepted traditions. So do you see here is a clear conflict between traditional values and modern values. The girl follows old system, traditional system, traditional values, whereas the boy follows new system. So in your note copy, note down under the heading conflict and write down the story shows conflict between traditional values and modern values, tradition versus modernity. So the important thing about this opening paragraph is that it introduces two of the central characters, and it also introduces the major conflict in the story, the conflict of old values versus new modern values. Okay, now let's move to second paragraph. But all the same, there was a strong attachment between them, and the whole college was aware of it. Let me tell you, focus on this word but. The second paragraph, first sentence begins with the word but. Why do we need the word but here? If you go to the first paragraph, in the first paragraph, you saw that Keshav follows new ways and Prema follows traditions. So somebody who follows new ways and traditional ways, we might think that perhaps they do not agree with one another, right? But, look here now, second paragraph. But all the same, there was a strong attachment between them. Although ideologically they followed different ideologies. Keshav followed modern ideology, Prema followed traditional ideology. Still, even then, there was a strong attachment between Prema and Keshav. And interestingly, it was not a secret. The whole college knew that they were in love. Although he was a Brahmin, Keshav regarded marriage with this Banya girl as the culmination of his life. In the first paragraph, you read that Keshav was opposed to old caste system. Now you find out that Keshav is a Brahmin boy, and Prema is a Banya girl. Now you see the clear caste conflict, Brahmin versus Banya. So Keshav thought that his marriage with this girl, Prema, the Banya girl, is the ultimate purpose of his life. He believed that his life will be meaningful only when he married this girl. Read ahead. He did not care a straw about his father and mother. This is quite interesting. Now you see another conflict in this story. Under the heading conflict in a note copy, please note down. What will you note down? Note down second type of conflict. The first conflict you wrote was ideological conflict, right? New values versus traditional values in paragraph 1. Now we have a second conflict. This conflict is, you can say, parent versus children. The conflict between parents, mother, father, and children. As you can see, Keshav, it says that Keshav did not care at all about his father and mother. So we can easily guess that this story was written 90 years before. So in those days in India, the caste hierarchy was very strong in society. So we can guess that Keshav's father and mother must have been opposed to this intercaste love affair. But Keshav did not care about their opposition. So in your note copy, note down second type of conflict, conflict between Keshav and his parents. Note down, there is conflict between Keshav and his parents. Read ahead. Caste traditions he considered a fraud. If anything embodied the truth for him, it was prema. This is quite interesting. Keshav is opposed to caste system and he regards that he thinks that prema is the symbol of truth for him. But for prema, again, pay attention to this contrast marker but, because we are reading academic reading, so pay attention to but. But for prema, it was impossible to take one step in opposition to the dictates of caste and family. So do you see a very clear conflict here? The boy says caste is fraud, and the girl says she cannot go against this caste system and family. Now you have another source of conflict. Do you realize caste system is the major cause of all problems in this story? Caste system is the major cause of conflict in this story. The boy says he doesn't believe in caste, and the girl says she can't oppose caste and family. Let's move to third paragraph now. One evening, the two of them met in a secluded corner of Victoria Park and sat down on the grass facing one another. Even today, today also, when people are in love, where do they date? Mostly they might be dating in a park. 90 years before also, you can see the two of them are dating in a park in a lonely corner. They sat down on the grass facing one another. The strollers had gone off one by one, but these two lingered on. Now you can easily guess that maybe they were having some discussion or debate. They were looking at each other in silence, perhaps. Everybody had gone, but they were there. They had got into a discussion it was impossible to end. Now, in your note copy, note down one thing, or you can just understand without noting that as the story moves from paragraph 1 to paragraph 2 to paragraph 3, you will see that the conflict in the story grows into complication. In plot, conflict is at the heart of plot. And the conflict begins with some kind of tension. Here we see the tension of caste system. And conflict develops into complication. What does complication mean? Complication means things becoming worse. Things becoming worse. Okay, let's read. They had got into a discussion it was impossible to end. Keshav said angrily. Now mark this word, because this is the first time in the story where you see the nature of this character. Now, under the heading characters, you earlier noted down the name of Keshav. Now, under Keshav, please note down, he is an angry boy. Note down in your copy, Keshav is angry and violent. And do you realize this is in the nature of most of the boys, young boys? They become angry when they are denied what they want to get. All it means is that you don't care about me. Look, this is what Kesav is accusing Prema about. When earlier Prema said that Prema cannot stand against the rules of the caste and family, now Keshav says that, oh, for you, your caste and your family is everything, and you don't care about me, your lover. So Keshav, you can see, is accusing Prema that she cares more about caste and family, and she cares less about her lover. So in paragraph 3, as you can see, the tension rises, conflict rises, Keshav is angry, and hot discussion is there. Now the situation is getting more and more difficult. Now let's move to paragraph 4 and see what happens. Let's read. Prema tried to calm him down. So can you see the opposing nature of the boy and girl? The girl is calm and quiet. The boy is violent and angry. See the element of conflict. Prema tried to calm him down. You are being unjust to me. Now, let me also remind you one more element of the story. Please note down in your copy under the heading elements of story. You are writing, you wrote character, then you wrote conflict. Now write dialogue. Dialogue is another important element in a story. Wherever you will see sentences given within inverted commas, they are the dialogues. Dialogues are what characters speak, and dialogues can be expressed directly, as you can see on the screen, or sometimes characters can be thinking inside their mind. That is called monologue. When a character speaks to himself alone, that is called monologue. And when a character speaks to somebody, then you call that a dialogue. You are being unjust to me, Keshav. It's only that I do not know how I can bring it up at home without upsetting them. So now see, Prema, Keshav wants Prema to inform her parents that they are in love affair and they want to get married. And Prema says that she does not know how to tell this intercaste love affair without disturbing the parents, because Prema understands that if her parents come to know that she is in love with a boy from another caste, they will be very upset. Why? They are devoted to the old traditions. As I told you in paragraph 1, that in this story there is a conflict between old traditions and new values. You can see here, Prema's parents follow old tradition. What does it mean? Prema's parents follow caste system. If they hear anything about a matter like this from me, can't you imagine how distressed they will be? So now she is, look what she is telling. She wants Keshav to understand Prema's problem. It's not that Prema does not love Keshav. Prema loves Keshav and would like to marry Keshav, but Prema also is concerned about what will her parents think about it. Because as you can read here, Prema says that she does not want to agitate and distress her parents, and Prema knows that if she tells this thing to her parents, they will definitely be quite distressed and unhappy. Now look what Keshav says. And aren't you a slave of those old traditions too then? Now Keshav makes a second charge. He says that, oh, you are the slave of caste system, old traditions. So do you realize in a note copy, note down if necessary, under the heading conflict, there is a conflict between the old traditions in this story and new values. Who follows old tradition? Prema's parents follow old traditions, and Prema also follows old tradition. It's not easy for Prema to stand against the old tradition. Now move ahead. No, I am not, Prema said, her eyes tender. It's very important here because this allow you to understand Prema's character. Prema is a very brave girl. Prema is a very courageous girl, and Prema cannot tolerate false accusations. Do you see when Keshav says to Prema that she is slave to old traditions? Instantly, Prema opposes, saying, "No, I am not slave to old traditions, but what my mother and father want is more important to me than anything." This is very important. Please note down here another theme. What theme? The influence of parents on their children. The influence of parents on the children and parental control on their children. Do you see what Prema says? Prema says that what her mother and father want is more important to her than what Kesav wants. Kesav wants intercaste marriage, but Prema is very clear. She says that what my parents decide is more important for me. I cannot stand against my parents. Now, look what Keshav says. And you yourself don't count at all? This is very important question. This is very important question. Keshav says to Prema that, Prema, don't you think your life is also important? You only think you should do what your parents say? Now move ahead. If that is how you want to understand it, Prema says that is not the case. But if you understand that way, I can't do anything. I used to think those old ways were just for silly hypocrites. Note down this phrase old ways because I've been telling you one major source of conflict in this story is between the old ways of life and new ways of life. Keshav says he represents new ways of life, and Prema seems to be representing old ways of life, and Prema's mother and father also represent old ways of life. So the conflict in this story is between old ways and new ways. Note down under the heading conflict in a note copy. So Keshav says, I used to think those old ways were just for silly hypocrites. Who are hypocrite? A person who claims or pretends to have certain beliefs about what is right, but who behaves in a way that disagrees with those beliefs. Okay, then he says, but now it seems that educated girls like you knuckle under to them too. This is a satire. Keshav makes a satire to Prema. He says that although you are quite educated girl, you go to college, you're getting a degree, higher degree, but still you follow old traditions. Since I am ready to give up everything for you, I expect the same thing from you. Now, this line note down under the heading character where you have written Kesav and note down he is ready to give up everything for Prema. And now please understand that as you reach toward the end of the story, you will find that in section 1, Kesav says that he is ready to give up everything for Prema. But in reality, in section 5 and 6, you will see that when the real moment comes, when the crisis comes, Kesav does not give up everything for Prema. Keshav just turns away from his promise. So sometimes I feel like Keshav is a hypocrite because he says that he can give up everything for Prema, but actually he does not. He is not able to give up everything for Prema. And then Keshav says, "I expect the same thing from you." Okay, now let's move ahead. In silence, Prema wondered what authority she had over her own life. In silence, Prema wondered what authority she had over her own life. Now, this is very important point here because it raises another issue. What issue? The issue of women's freedom. And in your note copy, under the heading theme, write down this story has the theme of women's freedom. Right? So, uh, 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 in silence, Prema wondered what authority she had over her own life. Now, note down that Prema has no control over her own life. And understand that women have no control over their own life. Now, ask a question. If women do not have control over their own life, who has control over their life? Now the clear answer comes: the father has control over their own life, the brother has control over their own life, the male has control over their own life. She had no right to go in any way against her mother and father, who had created her from their own blood and reared her with love. So you can clearly see how much in our society parents control children. To Keshav, she said humbly, can love be considered only in terms of husband and wife and not friendship? Now, this is another very significant point in the story that you should note down. Now, Prema says, is it necessary to be husband and wife to be in love? Does being in love means getting married and being husband and wife and having sex in a sense? Then Prema says that cannot we define love just as friendship? Cannot we become two true friends without getting married? Then she further says, I think of love as an attachment of the soul. Now, in your note copy under the heading theme, note down when Prema says that love is an attachment of soul, Prema is an idealist. Note down, Prema is an idealist. This is for Prema, love is an idea. For Prema, love is an abstract idea. Love does not need body. To be in love, you don't have to be husband. To be in love, you don't have to be wife. You can simply remain as friends and still love each other. And when she says that love is attachment of soul and not attachment of body, this is idealism. For Prema, love is intangible, something that cannot be seen, cannot be touched. Love is an abstract idea. This is very important because note down in your copy, we see Prema as an idealist, right? Now move ahead. Now look what Keshav says. You will drive me crazy with your rationalizations. Do you see? Prema is very rationalizing girl. She makes good arguments. She makes good reasoning because she is an educated girl. Under characterization, where you have noted down Prema, note down that Prema is a very rational girl. She can argue and she can reason well. Note down. Just understand this. Now look, Keshav is violent, is in tension, angry. Look what he says. Just understand this. If I am disappointed, meaning that if you say no to me, I can't go on living. This is a threat. This is a threat. And do you realize boys have this thing? When boys do not get what they want from a girl, the last resort they have is they threaten the girl. If you say no, I will commit suicide. Right? Look, I can't go on living means Keshav says I will commit suicide if you say no to my proposal. I am a materialist. Now, earlier I said this story is remarkable for many types of conflicts. And we talked about conflict between old traditions and new ways of life. Now here is another conflict. As I told you earlier, Prema is an idealist. Now Keshav says he is a materialist. Now what is the difference between an idealist and a materialist? For an idealist, soul is important. For a materialist, body is important. So for Prema, husband and wife and sex is not important. But for Keshav, being husband and wife, getting married and enjoying the pleasures of body is important because for Keshav, life means the body. And read ahead. I'm a materialist and it's not possible for me to be satisfied with some intangible happiness in the world of the imagination. When Prema says that love can be attachment of soul, now Keshav says that this is intangible. Something intangible means you cannot catch it. You cannot see from the senses. Intangible means you cannot see, you cannot hear, you cannot smell, you cannot touch. That is intangible soul. Now Keshav says, no, I don't believe in that kind of idea. I move ahead. He caught Prema's hand. Look here, very important. This is the first point in the story where the boy touches the girl. He caught Prema's hand and tried to draw her towards him. Maybe he was trying to hug her or kiss her, but then she broke away. Look, Prema did not allow Kesab to hold her, but she broke away and said, I told you I'm not free. Now, please remark this line, highlight this line, underline this line, and note in your copy. Prema, the second time she says, I'm not free. And this is very remarkable because it raises the question about women's freedom. Are women in our society free to take decisions about their life? Prema cannot take decision about her love with Kesab. Don't ask me to do something I have no right to do. Prema has no right to touch a boy's body because Prema is not married to Kesav. And in those days, in that culture, touching a boy's body or holding a boy's hand was regarded immoral if you are not married to the boy. A girl was supposed not to touch a boy before marriage. If she had spoken harshly, he would not have been so hurt. For an instant he restrained himself. Then he stood up and said sadly, just as you wish. Look, when Prema rejected Kesav's effort to hold her hand, Kesav felt very bad and offended. And look what he says, just as you wish, and slowly walked away. Prema, in tears, continued to sit there. This is the end of section 1. And please note down that in at the end of section 1, the story gets very complicated. And at the end of section 1, what do you see? Prema is crying and Kesab has left her without saying anything. Prema is alone in the evening in the corner of the Victoria Park. Everybody has gone. She's alone and she's crying. So section 1 ends with a kind of climax or with a kind of crisis in the story. The girl is crying and the boy has left her. So by the time we come to the end of section 1, we are quite prepared for this. Now we know that this story is going to be very violent. Now we can easily guess that something very dangerous is going to happen in the story, because in the very beginning we see the boy is angry, the boy is violent, the boy is shouting, the boy is threatening, the boy has left the girl, and the girl is crying. So I stop here and I'll make a second video for second section. I hope my explanation has helped you understand the story, and based on this explanation, make notes, and when you come for class, make your presentation. So let me stop my recording here.